Hi guys. So I'm back with more explanation and more talking about my post on why I didn't do Santa and all of the other childhood kind of things. I got several questions. I'm going to try to answer them. I'm going to try not to look at the bottom only because then I'll get so distracted, but I'm so glad that you're here. A little about me in case you don't know, because I just hate, like, people will sometimes make comments and I'm like, you don't even know that I've got 3 kids. They're grown. It's too late if you're trying to criticize me and you're going to tell me that my kids are going to hate me when they grow up. My oldest is 25. My twin boys are 23. I guess when they're 30 they could hate me. As of now they don't, which I'm grateful for, and I'll let you know if that happens. I will also tell you that I would have never had the confidence to talk like I do until my kids were grown. If you go back onto my TikTok, which is the bigger page, you'll see that I started posting January of this year. And that is only because as a parent, I was insecure. I had so many concerns. I loved my kids like everybody does. But before I could share, I really wanted to know that my kids were going to be okay. And I am very fortunate to, as of now, to tell you that they are a blessing to me. They are thriving, they are happy, they're successful, they're walking with the Lord. I couldn't ask for anything more, and I am very, very blessed. And when Apostle Paul says, I have no greater joy than to hear that you're walking in truth and that my children are walking with the Lord, like, that is the absolute truth and the greatest blessing that we could have. So more detail. You know, when I wrote that post, whenever I write something, you can know that there's like something going on in my mind, like I'm thinking about something or someone or praying for somebody. And at that time when I wrote it, I was actually thinking about teenage relationships. And so there were people who are like, oh, how could you use that word abusive? Like, you don't even know what that means. But I mean, teen relationships are abusive. Okay, so most of them are just downright mean. They're abusive, and they have this way of marking people. And when I was, when I talk to kids, I'm like, oh, he said I was ugly, or she said I was stupid, and just all this kind of stuff. And I'm just like, no, that's not the truth. And I'm thinking, this is so sad. Like, how are we going to work through this, right? It's so ingrained in them. And then they carry these devastating hurts for a while. And so that's actually what I was thinking of at the time when I wrote it. But I did not do Santa, and so then I wrote the post. So let's look at this issue in the light of raising a teenager. So what are the kind of things that you've heard about raising teens? Okay, most people do not. I think if we were to birth teenagers, most of us probably wouldn't do it, right? Because it's rarely said in a positive light. I know that for me, I thought I was so prepared, but it was very trying and testing. It was. It's hard. They are growing. I followed the classical education method when I homeschooled my kids, and in it, just in terms of development, it was very, very accurate. Like around middle school, they start questioning everything. And then high school, they get very argumentative. And they do that with you. They do that with your parenting. They do that with your educational choices like I did with homeschooling. And so then what are the kinds of things that you've heard about raising teens? What are the concerns that you have? What was your experience? What have you seen? These are all data points to take in. Okay, and how you might go about certain things. What do I see in teenagers? I see a lot of struggling. Now, you could say that it's biased or not objective because obviously why would they come see me if they weren't struggling? But I don't seem to have a problem getting teens to come talk to me, right? There's just a lot of struggling. Even if they come from wonderful, stable homes and all that, there's just so much going through their minds. And just about every teen I work with is from an intact home, okay, upper middle class, well-to-do. They have a lot of privileges and things like that. But it's the internal struggling and the things that they're going through, and it's terrible because in the neighboring school district where I work, and that school district, there was 17 suicides in 2 years, I think. I mean, it was just horrific. It's like one after the other, and everyone's like upset and crying as they should be. And what do we do about the mental health? And so this is what we're seeing. Obviously, those are extreme cases. So what else do we see a lot of? I see a lot of social anxiety, depression, physical symptoms coming from all of that, and a lot of negative and distorted cognitive thought. So as a parent, what I decided, because I still remember when I was like, I want to say high school and college, I already knew like I probably wasn't going to do Santa, but I was ambivalent. I mean, I didn't care. I didn't grow up with Santa. My parents are immigrants and they were just way too busy for Santa, okay? Obviously they didn't know about it coming to this country. Maybe they did, but I don't think they got the whole thing. Plus they work 6 days a week, 12, 14 hours a day. They don't have time for that. And so for me, I don't think I really thought about it much, but I remember when I was working with those kids and when they got to the point where they questioned their faith, which every kid does, and they should question it, should be tested. Our faith should be tested. I remember one kid calling God the Sky Santa. And then if you read a lot of atheist or agnostic kind of people who don't believe in God, you'll hear people call, right now I hear them call God a lot, Sky Daddy. You hear these things. And I remember hearing that from these kids, the Sky Santa especially, and thinking, what does that mean? Like, why are they saying that? Like, what are they thinking? Now, I'm not going to say that just because you practice Santa, like your kids are going to doubt everything. Like, no, okay? Just please don't put that on me. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying that it was something that I started to think about what role I wanted to play in my kids' lives. Because the one thing is that when they're little, they're so sweet, they're so innocent, they're pure. But then by the time they get to the teen years, as we all know, after time passes, living in this broken, fallen world, life gets hard. And there's a lot of questioning and doubts and stuff that come. And I decided that I was going to be the parent that they could trust, that they could always come to me to talk about sex, peer pressure, truths, societal truths, like drug use, like just anything and everything in an age appropriate way. When they ask me where babies are made, you don't have to get explicit at the age of 5. But the other thing is pornography too. Like that's huge. And I just decided that I was always going to tell them the truth so that when they came to me to ask certain things, I would give them the information they're looking for, and then that might be it. But they were going to know that it was the truth. And it did turn out that way. Like when my boys were around 13, 14 even, they would sometimes just like throw me a question. I'd answer it. I didn't need to always get into it with them. I didn't want them to feel like, oh, mom's going to start interrogating me. But I wanted them to know that I was a source of information for them. And yes, even concerning birth control and sexual activity of their friends. And just, my kids were homeschooled, so it was not that intense. But nonetheless, I didn't know if I was going to homeschool high school and what that was going to look like. I did end up homeschooling high school, but I didn't know at the time when they were like 10, 11, 12. So I wanted to be that truth for them. It was very hard. My parents didn't talk to me about sex. They didn't talk to me about menstruation. They didn't talk to me about anything. Not, they're from Korea. They were immigrants. They don't even have the language to tell me that kind of stuff, and I get that. And so it was so hard for me to come out with certain words, but I just did it. I did it when they asked me. And, even like when we would do Bible together, there's lots of questions that come in through scripture, like this doesn't make sense, that doesn't make sense. And I wanted them to understand that grappling with certain things, like it's okay, we question, but we are always going to seek the truth. So that's the foundation that I had with my kids. And it's even in mental health. Like when I worked at a community mental health center where it's just so many clients, like there's just not enough. And we can't keep them forever, right? Like we can't walk with these kids and help raise these kids or anything like that. And the goal was to get them out. And so I said, then what do I do? And then I remember one of my supervisors saying, then what you do is teach their parents to be like their therapist. I was like, well, how do I do that? Right? Like, because like what if with all these problems and stuff, but in that there is a lot of truth. Okay, you can hire all the therapists you want. I have had wonderful people pour into the lives of my children in terms of youth pastors and coaches and homeschool teachers and other parents, like wonderful, godly people. But in the end, you are the one walking with your children every single day for the rest of one of your lives until the Lord calls you home. So then you should have the tools to be able to raise them the way that you want, and then to develop that deep relationship, that trusting relationship, where as your children go out into the world and soar, and if they have like a question, they know where they can come home to. That is attachment theory too, okay? So if someone was like, oh, where's your research on this? Well, like in attachment theory, the parent is the secure base. You are the secure base. And so when you look at your child and they're playing, and as they get older and they get stronger to explore, they look back at you, is mommy still here? And then if you're there and you're smiling at them, then they know that they're safe enough to go out and explore a little bit more. That's attachment theory. And so why wouldn't it apply even as we go out? Like, your kids know that you're here. And even with my grown kids, I say, I am always here for you as long as God gives me breath in my lungs. But one day I won't be here. But while I'm here, go out, live in the world, do whatever, but know that I'm here. And then you can come back if you have a question, if you need a place of rest. Like, that's what parents are for. And that's what I'm preparing them for. So a couple things that people said. On the negative side, we encourage children to use their creative imagination through education. So how is that considered damaging? Every time they play imaginary games, are we supposed to tell them it's not real? No, that's not what I'm saying. If anything, creative imagination from the child and creative play, that is healthy, it's necessary, and it is a developmental stage that they need to go through. And we're not supposed to thwart it. And in fact, it's a problem because right now, so many kids are playing video games and they're just being sucked up by other people's creativity and not their own, and it's causing problems, okay? So like with that, when they are in creative play and they are making up games, you have to remember that they are in control of this world, right? Like if that, in fact, in play therapy, I'm not a play therapist, but I've seen some and they're amazing. In play therapy, when a child is continually the victim, like they're making themselves a victim, you've got a problem, right? If the adults around them are like hitting that doll that's supposed to be them, like you've got a problem. So in healthy, creative, imaginative play, you want the kids to be wild, and they're always the prince, the princess, the king, the soldier, the samurai, like whatever it is, they are in control and they are the leaders and the rulers of their universe, and that's exactly what it's supposed to be. And that's how they're supposed to work things out in their mind and define their roles and all this kind of stuff. And so, but when they're a child and they're like, is that guy, like, how does this fat guy go around all over? Like, where does that come from? And you're like, oh, it's because of this. You are in control. And then they're like, really? Like, I don't know about that. You are telling them that they're crazy. You're telling them, oh, no, it's true. Like, Santa's going to come and he's going to bring. And then the creepiest is that elf. Like, room to room, he's just staring at you and he's supposed to, like, think about this. Okay? Like, I know kids that are terrified. I have no idea, like, what makes a parent think it's okay to terrorize their kids? That's like an old generation thing, I think. I don't know. Okay? I don't care. Someone said, like, you're sheltering your kids. I don't care. With young kids, I'm happy to shelter them. But if anything, am I not sheltering them because I'm telling them the truth? So I'm not sure where that is. So creative, imaginative play on the part of your child, being started by your child, and he's in control, like, that's wonderful. And that's what kids need. Okay? So did you let your kids watch movies or take them to Disney? What about fairy tales? Yes, I let them watch age-appropriate movies. I actually didn't do Disney, not because of the fairy tale part, but because I just personally had problems with, like, the whole princess and prince and always saving. You have to realize that back when my kids were little, there weren't these, like, more stronger female characters. I'm not, like, into, like, oh, women. I love the God-ordained roles of man and woman, of husband and wife and all of that, but there are times, and there are many times, like, we are partners. My husband and I are partners. We are equally strong. When he is weak, I carry him, and vice versa. And so I had a problem with Disney. There weren't as many strong characters, like I said, but the one thing I let them watch all the time was Mulan, because I really liked her. I thought she was strong. And I never took, it says, did you take them to Disney? Actually, I didn't, only because we were poor. We didn't have any money. We lived very frugally, and I actually never took my kids to Disney until my oldest was starting college. Then we went on a cruise. So my daughter was a senior, 12th grade. My boys were in 10th grade, and we actually went on a Disney cruise, but I actually never took them to Disney because we had no money, and I'm okay with that. Okay. What about fairy tales? Same thing. When you're reading a book with your child, they can tell what's the difference, and it helps to stir their imagination. And what's wonderful about fairy tales is that as they get older, you want less pictures. You just want words, so that their own minds are going crazy. I still remember my daughter's favorite book was Wizard of Oz. She read that thing until the book fell apart. And then when she was 9, I let her watch the movie, and she was angry the whole time, like, with a frown and arms crossed. I said, babe, what's wrong? She goes, the pictures are not like what's in my mind. It's ruined. And then after that, she couldn't even read the book anymore. She was so disappointed. I was so sad for showing her the movie. And so I have nothing wrong. Like, I have nothing against fairy tales, but you can pretty much guess that, like Hansel and Gretel, for example, like they know it's fake. I would never tell them that's real. Like their stepmother is like out to get them or whatever it was. So the other questions I've gotten: how do I tell my 8-year-old, and then what do I do with my 18-month-old twins? How do I transition to no Santa for my 4-year-old? Family has a long line of mental struggles. I don't want to add to it. And then, since I already started, how do I find a healthy way to tell a 4-year-old that is so excited about Santa? In the end, only you know your child. It takes me anywhere from 1 to 2 months to kind of get to know a kid before I understand how to word my conversation with them in order to be able to speak into their life. So that's why when people ask me for specifics, I'm like, I don't know your child. Only you know your child. You are the expert on your children. So it's something that you're going to have to take some time to think about. Now, for example, if it was my own kids, like how I would do it with an 8-year-old, I would ask them, what do you think? I wouldn't be surprised if they're already suspicious. And I would say, you know what? I wanted to tell you now because I kind of regret telling you different. And I also don't want you to find out from your friends because I don't want you to be embarrassed. And that's how I would do it. And that was the other thing too. Like I've had, when I was growing up, I had some kids, and then when I was in ministry, like I had some kids, like they found out about no Santa through school or other kids in the neighborhood. And then you know how mean kids are. Like they would mock them. Like, oh, you're a baby. Oh, you still need a diaper. Like just all these kind of things. Like even if that kid that's mocking your kid, like just learned about no Santa the day before, like now they're like all big shot because they're mature. That's the kind of stuff I'm like, I just can't. Your kid might then, if they're bitter about that, like they might look around and be like, who did this to me, right? And they're gonna point at you. Am I saying that's gonna happen? No, not for everybody. I'm just telling you. That's why I would say with the 8-year-old, I would see where they are, kind of find out, and then tell them. And then maybe if they seem very upset, you could apologize, or not, or just be like, yeah, I kind of regret doing that. I wish I just told you the truth from the beginning. Everybody, there's a lot of pressure to be a good mom, and I thought I was being a good mom, but now I realize as I have grown that it's not something I would do again. And kids completely understand. I made a video on this before. The more humble you are, and the more truthful you are, and the more you say like you're sorry about certain things, or you say like that's how I thought when I was in my 20s, but I don't think like that anymore. Like I've changed. Children accept it and they respect you for it. Okay, I have never had a child be like, I can't respect this person. It does not work like that. Just look around. Like when people truly apologize to you for things, like does your respect for them go down? It never does. And so that's how I would do an 8-year-old. For a 4-year-old, especially a 4-year-old that is so excited, I would be like, this is just what I'm saying for my kids. You have to determine for your own child and how you think they would, what kind of language you think they need. For my own, I'd be like, where do you think Santa comes from? Like, how do you think he fits down that chimney? Did you ever wonder, like, how does he make it all around the world? And just maybe ask a little good questions to dig a little deeper to find out what they're thinking. And then be like, you know what, I realized that it's a story that a lot of people tell kids, but I realized that I want to just tell you the truth so that you know. But I also want you to know that a lot of your friends believe it, and their parents want to do that for their kids, so we're not going to say anything. This one, someone else asked, how do you teach your kids to interact with another family who does do Santa Claus? That is how I approached it with my kids. I just said that there are some things that other families just do differently. This is what they do. And by around like age 4, my kids understood. They, like they know to say hi to strangers or whatever. If mom's friend comes, they are a lot wiser than we give them credit for, but only you know how you think your child will react and how to teach them these things. They know to not make comments about people's looks, right? Like they know certain things, so that's all we can do. And then they continued with, I don't want them to be the ones telling other kids that Santa isn't real. How do I support them through that? I totally understand that. I get that. I would be horrified if my kids were, but at the same time, That is also on the other parent. That's their decision that they tell their children that sooner or later somebody is going to tell their kid, or their kid is going to figure it out. You know what I mean? I would hope it wouldn't be through my kid, but it is through, it's through somebody. They're going to find out. And so that burden is also on that parent. They shouldn't be taking their kids around other kids. In fact, I still remember there was a family who, it was like our neighbor, and they came over to our house at the time, and they're like, my kids still believe in Santa. They actually had a talk, very polite, kind talk with my kids. Could you guys please not say anything about Santa? And my kids were like, oh yeah, we won't. And so the dad did that. So that's on that parent. And you can only do your part, but in the end, they're human. Everybody's human, and people are going to make mistakes. And if that family hates you and they stop talking to you, like, what can you do? We have a 2-year-old. We don't want to overdo it and forget the meaning. I don't want to do Santa, but how do we tell her? And what other things do you do in place of Santa? For us, because we're Christians, it was Jesus's birthday, that this is the time when we think about how God came to this earth, that he sent his son to die for us. And it was a joy. And lots of singing of hymnals, of course, and the focus on Christ. And when my kids were little, yes, we did do gifts, of course. And we said, Daddy, who do you think everybody's Santa is? And they're like, oh, Daddy. Yes, Daddy paid for these gifts. Mommy wrapped them or whatever. And these are your gifts. And it worked for us. It wasn't, I don't know, it just wasn't that big of a deal. It's like, thinking back, I just can't remember that much drama over it. I do think, like, one year, one of my kids were like, why can't we have all those gifts, under the tree? And I said, because I buy you stuff like all year long. I don't save or wait anything. Like, if you need anything, we buy it for you. So what am I going to wrap under the tree? And he's like, oh, you're right. So do you celebrate Christmas at all? Because I love the holiday and the decorations. Yes, of course I celebrate Christmas. I love Christmas. I love the festivities. I like the food, the happiness, seeing family, all of that. But again, it was all around the birth of Christ, seeing cousins, good food. Even within my own family, I have 3 younger sisters, and between us we have 16 kids. Like, there was just a point where we had to stop with the gifts. We couldn't afford it, right? Like, we literally couldn't afford it. And then so one year we did Pollyanna. Like, even that was just not really fun. And then we got to, like, giving kids the money, but then it was just, since each kid just got like $20, all it was just passing out $20 bills. It was just kind of weird. And I said, we're going to stop with the gift giving at this point. And yes, it was sad. The older kids didn't really care. The younger kids never got to fully experience some of it. But that's just the way that life goes. And I said, we always give and celebrate, like, big time for the kid at birthdays. We do lots of that stuff. But at Christmas time, I said, let's just, like, reduce the stress. And we're just going to get together a lot and spend a lot of time with family, go to church. And that's what we did. So, I hope that answered. Now I'm going to just go through this. If there are any questions, and I just want you guys to know that the negativity does not bother me, like the people who did. I just was like, where is this coming from? Should I be, like, expecting a lot? But that was it. We don't do Santa either. Yeah, a lot of people, it seems like they don't. I think a lot of people struggle with that, because it's a lot of work on the parents too, don't you think? Like, who needs that? I know I didn't. I had a lot. Do I think social media is a factor? Oh yeah. I always ask my teens, like, how much of social media do you think, like, creates or affects what you think about yourself? And they're like, oh, more than half. And I've heard that over and over again. So social media, like, even, like, I guarantee you, like, your kids are going to find out Santa isn't real sooner or later, really quick. And then just the distorted thought, it is a struggle. When I sit with kids, and I actually went through an exercise with them of going through their own pictures on their phone, and I said, look at how happy you look in every single picture, right? But what were you actually going through at the time? And that was eye-opening for them. And that was recently something I did with my own, because when I had kids, it was all negatives, like cameras, you had to go and then get them developed. So I didn't have that. And I was recently going through an old photo album, and I'm like, and I remember what I was going through at the time, emotionally, moving, my husband's work, the stress, marital problems, kid problems, all that kind of stuff. but we all look so happy in these pictures. And I was like, this is like an Instagram feed. Like, we just look so happy. Nobody would know what was going through. Like, I don't think anybody will know the struggles that we have had, and nobody, I mean, how would they? But we have mental illness, we have a lot of struggles, we had marital problems, money, because I had 3 kids in 2 years. I don't even know how we did it. So that's there. So yeah, social media is huge. I don't think we can completely keep our kids off of it. So it's about monitoring and managing, and that's like a whole nother type of topic. Hi, Kansas. That's very sweet. Yeah. So thank you. Okay. I don't see any other questions. Other people made such a big deal out of us of not doing Santa more than, yeah, exactly. Kids don't care. No Easter Bunny. No, and that's the other thing about the Easter Bunny. I feel like now it's gotten so big. Okay, so we moved a lot. My husband struggles with mental illness too. He has had to do a lot of healing. And so being a good, helpful wife and mother was a heavy burden at times. It was. And so being there for my kids and caring for them, at times that's all I could do. I could not add more and more, right? Like create some kind of fantasy tale when it wasn't like that in life. I wanted to protect my kids, of course, and take care of them. And so things like an Easter basket, like I would go crazy if I had to do that. And it's gotten so big. Like, I don't remember Easter being like that. I remember, of course, kids getting Easter baskets, but now it's like a second Christmas. And why? Like, I don't understand. Off topic, how do you keep education fun? My child does not like it and has no shame game to talk about it. You really can't keep education fun all the time. When you homeschool, there's going to have to just be some grit sometimes. Now, I always customize it to my kids so that it's manageable for them and keeps them interested to move forward. But kids have to have a greater vision for their life. And when people sometimes focus too much, like, oh, this has to be fun, like it's not fun. I can tell you that my boys graduated from college and they are now working. They are both working for Big Four accounting firms at a different one. They're both auditors. They're doing great. They've got all this stuff and they hate their jobs. And I said, like, yeah, this is right now. You're going to hate it. You can pivot at any time. Find another job. And there is such a huge demand for them, right? So they could easily go somewhere else and get another job. But in life, there are going to be times when you're not going to enjoy it. And that is the same with education. So it is much more about keeping them motivated, having a goal, which is something I love to do with kids. I just met with a bunch of 9th graders and we're going to set out their high school goals and into college and what the future. I'm not pegging them in. Okay, plans could change tomorrow, but it's about giving them a vision and giving them a point like, okay, well, when you are 18, is it for your family? I don't know. When you are 20, for me, it was as soon as you get 4 years of college, as soon as you graduate, you have to be financially independent. What is that going to look like? And I did a video on this and like people were pretty good about it, but some people disagreed. But it's more of what is that going to look like? What do you need to buy to live a life where you're not struggling too hard? I talk about homeschooling a lot. I did a homeschool live, but I had to film it like 2 or 3 times because it was before all the Instagram glitching and it just got lost. It's all done. But I'm going to do it again. If you have homeschool questions, I will put up a thing, a question box where you can DM me and I'm going to try to answer all those. By the way, we grew up in a strict Russian home, therefore I want to encourage in a godly, gentle way. Yes, God is a God of love, and that is something that we as parents have to exemplify for them. Yes, there is discipline, but in that word discipline, it's disciple. They are our disciples, and we love them, and we show them what it is to live a disciplined, godly life in a loving way. If you are legalistic and all that, the kids are not going to thrive. Sometimes I feel like parents, like older generations, they're like, well, I was raised that way and I'm fine. There's something to be said for community. If you were raised in, and I get it because I immigrated to this country when I was 5 and I was raised in like a Korean community, right? Korean. And then of course school was white, black, like not Korean. So I had both worlds. But there's something when you share shared understanding that people can kind of endure stuff. And so if like all the neighbors were strict and all the neighbors raised their kids in a certain way, I'm not saying they're not going to be problems, but it's kind of easier for kids to still be okay because everybody is like that, right? Like there is this camaraderie there, and that's just their culture. I'm not saying there's not problems. Culture, I did a video on that too, that we can't mix culture with religion, with our spirituality. It's not the same, and we can't. But you know, it's just easier when all the fathers are strict or something like that. But once you get out of that, and you kind of have to change the culture, and thankfully the one thing about our culture is we are more loving toward kids, we are more gentler toward kids, and I like that. It could go the other way, but I like it. And with it, then we have to learn how to show them the love of God and who Jesus Christ is. All right. Not sure if you spoke on this, but what does discipline look like for a 3-year-old? I don't know. It depends upon your child. It really does. And it depends upon you and what your own struggles are. I talk a lot about parental mental health. You see, because there's some things where people can just filter it through their own perspective and their own experiences, and then like come to a conclusion that I wasn't thinking of. And so I don't necessarily like to talk about that. It's very individual. And so I'm not sure how to answer that question. So I'd rather not right now, if that's okay. So a book recommendation I will say is Hold On to Your Kids. I don't know. Gabor Mate was the secondary author. But Hold On to Your Kids is an excellent book that I highly recommend all parents read. Is it a perfect book? No. I give it like a 4.3. I doubt I'll ever give a book a 5, but a 4.3. Some issues here and there, but overall very good. How much of a role did your husband play in the homeschooling? Not much at all. He wasn't really supportive of it. He didn't really want me to homeschool, and it was really hard for him to do that for me. It all turned out very well. But when a person wants something, if that's something that you want, then you're going to have to go after and get it. You're going to have to go after and go get it. You can't expect other people who don't want that, like, to do any of the work. Kind of like, I like a really clutter-free house. My kids and husband, I don't think they could care less. So it's up to me to continually declutter. Like, they're not going to do that. And that's okay. I understand it. And so with that, that's why with homeschooling, that was my vision. My husband now is so supportive. He is like the hugest homeschool advocate ever. But there was just so much questioning and doubt and concern as my kids were growing up. We didn't know how it was going to turn out. We heard a lot of negativity from everybody. But it all turned out okay. What book did I just mention? Hold On to Your Kids. Okay? Hold On to Your Kids. Newsom? I can't remember the author, but if you just type in Hold On to Your Kids, Gabor Mate, M-A-T-E, it'll come up. All right. Hold On to Your Kids. Yep, that's it. That is very kind. It's getting darker and darker, as you guys can see. That is very kind. I am so glad to be able to help you guys. I am so glad to be able to, I'm going to see if my iPad will give me some light here. Maybe, no. I am thrilled that people are actually enjoying the things I share. I didn't think so. I just put it out there. If there is one person I can help, I'm thrilled to. But the encouragement I've gotten, the kindness I've gotten has made it all worthwhile. And so if there is anything I can help or answer for you or share with you just my experiences, I'm not saying you have to do exactly what I did, but if you just want another opinion, I am blessed and honored to be able to help. So I'm glad you found me too. I'm gonna go now. I gotta go get dinner and see my husband. He's like, oh my gosh, and then I'm gonna go make another TikTok. Take care. Bye.